We need to have better governance and better management of the budgets that we already have.
I have a track record of getting practical, effective things done.
Market rate needs to be a part of the conversation. We need to get more aggressive on how we build housing.
Attention BART riders.
Hey, San Francisco, I'm Ben Kaplan, and this is the podcast where we define who we are and who we want to be. We are San Francisco. Hey, everyone. In this episode of We Are San Francisco, I sit down with three dynamic candidates vying for the District 5 supervisor seat. Autumn Hope, Bilal Mahmood, and Scotty Jacobs. Unfortunately, Dean Preston was unable to make it to the studio this time. Together, we dive into the heart of San Francisco's most pressing challenges: housing, homelessness, and the fentanyl epidemic. Each candidate brings a unique perspective and a clear passion for the community, offering bold solutions and sharing the personal stories that drive their campaigns. Meet the candidates. Scotty, why do you want to run for the Board of Supervisors now?
I've always wanted to run for office. Part of it is just fulfilling a lifelong dream, which is to get into public service. I am someone who has a lot of family history here in San Francisco. I've always been proud to be from the Bay Area, and I've always been excited by the idea of being able to live as an adult in San Francisco because it's a place where you can be yourself. San Francisco has been a city for families. There are still families living in San Francisco, but when you hear stories about kids having to zigzag across sidewalks to get to school, or people getting mugged on Muni, or dogs overdosing on fentanyl because they're eating things off the street, we have real problems here. And we need real people with real solutions who are going to take us in a fundamentally different direction. And I want to be that person for District 5.
Autumn, thoughts?
One day I was coming home from the algebra campaign, and there's this guy in the alcove under my apartment who's doing drugs, and he's lighting fires in order to do it. So I kind of knelt down next to him and said, "Hey, can you please move a few feet over so you're not putting my kids at risk?" And I walked away and I came back and there were scorch marks on the sidewalk. And I think there are a lot of people in San Francisco who are in that same situation. And we need to be taking a stronger stand and compelling treatment for these folks and getting their lives back on track.
Bilal?
Running for San Francisco supervisor is personal for me. I'm the child of immigrants. My family immigrated to this country 40 years ago and grew up in student housing. And eventually my family was able to break into the middle class. And I firmly believe that a significant portion of that journey was possible because of the community that San Francisco, and specifically the Tenderloin, provided to my family. And that's a lot of what I want to make sure that the rest of the city can experience as well. The challenges that we're seeing in the Tenderloin and broadly throughout District 5, from Hayes Valley to the Haight, on issues of homelessness, on issues of housing, on our fentanyl crisis, those are the issues that are most challenging today that have not been addressed for many years now. And unless we address them, we're not going to be able to allow the rest of the city and the Bay Area to enjoy the same joy that I see in the Tenderloin every day as well.
And what makes you different as a candidate? What makes you stand out? It seems like it's a highly contested race. There is a sitting supervisor who's running for re-election in your race. What makes you stand out?
There is no one else in the District 5 race, one, who brings the necessary mix of what I believe to be private sector experience with public sector sensibility when it comes to taking a pragmatic approach to getting things done. I am the only candidate in District 5 who has run multi-$100 million lines of business before. San Francisco is on track for an $800 million budget deficit next year, a multi-billion-dollar budget deficit the following year. We need people who have been under the pressure of P&Ls to make the hard decisions that will ultimately get San Francisco back on track financially.
Autumn, hit me.
Well, I have a track record of getting practical, effective things done. I ran the school board recall. It worked. We got sensible leadership for our kids. I ran the campaign to bring algebra back for our schools. It took a year. And as of a couple days ago, we now have 8th graders in algebra class for the first time in a decade. What I bring is focused, effective leadership that gets results for the regular people of San Francisco.
Bilal?
I have had a record of being collaborative across the aisle, across different political ideologies or political factions in San Francisco, where you can't really pin it down in one ideology or another because we're focused on getting results. Even people who I've run against, I will collaborate with them and work across the aisle to get results done. And I think that's evidenced as well by our endorsements. And there's no one else in this race who has endorsements and coalition building experience like I do across San Francisco's political ideologies. And that's what we need right now in San Francisco. Unless we can have a supervisor who can collaborate with every office and everyone in San Francisco, we're not going to get results. And that's why we haven't gotten results.
How would you explain the difference between yourself and, say, Dean Preston, who is the current supervisor representing the district?
How long you got? I mean, there are a lot of things that make Dean and I very fundamentally different.
But to summarize.
Dean believes that all housing construction in District 5 should be 100% affordable housing. And if you look at how we've done in terms of getting affordable housing units actually built, and frankly, getting housing units just more broadly built in District 5, our progress has been dismal. My perspective on housing, market rate needs to be a part of the conversation. We need to get more aggressive on how we build housing. Dean touts being an advocate for renters. The clear choice for renters, I think, is literally what it says on Dean's pamphlet. That is just categorically untrue, because you cannot be the clear choice for renters if you are not clearly pro-housing. And Dean is very much not pro-housing, and you can look at his record, and it makes that abundantly clear.
Okay, Autumn, your thoughts.
Dean Preston right now is responsible for the Tenderloin, but he hasn't been effective at getting things done. Overdoses are up 17% since he took over. He hasn't really come up with any policies that would effectively address that. Instead, he's saying arresting drug dealers is pointless. We should defund the police by $100 million. If you actually want to solve the problems in the Tenderloin, these policies are counterproductive. If you look at me, I am advocating a balanced approach where we are trying to close down the open drug markets that are killing the neighborhood and going after the supply, demand, and their revenue all at once. Just like practical stuff that gets things done. And that's why I have the police union endorsement.
Bilal, do you agree?
We have a housing shortage and we need to build more. By building more, we reduce rents. And that's in opposition to the philosophy of the current supervisor. So my focus that differentiates from our opposition is really focusing on cutting the red tape. We are the slowest city to build housing in the Bay Area and in the state and possibly the country. So my focus is on cutting the red tape, the permits, the fees, making sure we're operating them in parallel rather than sequential to ensure that we're making progress on our housing development goals, both for the housing element, but to ensure that we're housing people who already live here so they don't have to leave or be displaced, but also for the next generation and people who want to live and move here. And we're supposed to be a city for immigrants and refugees, especially in this district.
What is one idea or policy from a competitor, an opponent, that you think is a good idea or is worthy of more consideration?
Actually, I'll give Dean some props on one particular thing that he's been a staunch advocate for and that I would continue to be a staunch advocate for when I'm elected in November, which is the Community Ambassador Program. I am very much a believer that our approach to public safety needs to involve rounding out the toolkit of solutions that are the right size solutions for the situations that merit intervention from public safety officers. I do not believe that a fully funded police department simply means let's just hire more officers, although certainly closing the staffing shortage in the police department is something we need to prioritize as a city. But not every situation requires intervention by someone who has lethal force on their hip.
Autumn, what do you think?
Bilal is good on housing, and we are largely in agreement on housing. I think we do need to reduce the red tape and get more housing built in our district. We take 33 months to approve a housing project in San Francisco, and that's just ridiculous. A lot of projects fall through because of financing issues and other issues. Costs go up over those 33 months, and then nothing gets built. And then that leads to a homelessness problem on the streets. That is something I hope any of us running for supervisor would focus on and get things done.
Bilal, what's your rationale here?
Proposition on the ballot right now for the expanding Muni access. And so free Muni for youth, I will acknowledge, I support that program, and I acknowledge that Supervisor Preston had advocated for it before. And I think that's an example of transit is something that we can all collaborate and get around, is that we need to be supporting equitable access for transit, for seniors, for youth, especially in District 5. In District 5 in Japantown, over 20% of the population is over the age of 80. And so equitable access to transit is extremely important for the senior population that lives in Japantown, extending into the Fillmore. And so things like free Muni for youth, as well as the free kind of equitable access programs for seniors for transit are things that I think I would agree with on policy there.
I'm running for the Board of Trustees because City College holds the key to solving San Francisco's toughest challenges.
San Francisco is a safe place to deal drugs.
No one is really in charge.
I do not have confidence in City Hall.
We might propose a solution.
Every time you put up a gatekeeper, you put up the potential for corruption.
If you have hope, if you think you can solve it, you'll work towards it. You're not alone.
If you care about safe streets and a fully staffed police department, care about City College.
Will you join me?
Let's fast forward to November. Congratulations, you've been elected. You're given a magic wand, and that magic wand, you can get one thing done for the people of District 5. It can't be, you can't make all their problems go away, but you can do one practical thing. You don't need support from other supervisors. You don't need mayoral support. You don't need anything else except your magic wand. What do you use that magic wand on?
Scotty.
I think one of the things I would immediately do is I would wave the wand to increase street safety. The Tenderloin is newly in District 5 after the last redistricting process, and it is also where we have the highest density of families in the entire city of San Francisco. I would wave a wand to make sure that we are increasing shelter capacity, to make sure that we are, one, able to get people off the streets as quickly as possible, that we are, two, making sure that we are linking people who are experiencing addiction with things like methadone clinics and buprenorphine and the treatments that we actually know work for treating the medical condition that is addiction. Finally, invest in street cleanliness.
Autumn, what do you think?
Can I make the open drug markets go away in one sweep?
You could.
Yeah.
But how would you do that to do it with your magic wand?
The thing about closing the open drug markets is it needs, you can't do just one thing to close it. What I would do is I would put a grocery store back in the Fillmore. Their grocery store is slated to close in January 2025, right as the new supervisor is taking office. You have people losing not only access to groceries, but their pharmacy and their bank all at the same time. The neighborhood has a lot of elderly people. It has a lot of single parents, and they really depend on that grocery store. I don't want to leave them in a lurch. So if I could just magically keep a grocery store on that site, that's what I would do.
Bilal?
I would use it to address the crisis that's facing the district, which is our fentanyl crisis. We've been treating the Tenderloin in the community, in the neighborhood that I live in currently, as a containment zone for years, if not decades. And that is the most pressing issue that is facing now the district, where we've had over 800 overdoses due to opioids in the city, largely concentrated in the Tenderloin. And it's not just the people who are suffering on the streets that are suffering from this. It's the children and the families that live in the Tenderloin. And they can't come out at night because they're afraid of the drug dealers that are outside or the gunshots that are happening literally every month. There are actual solutions to address this problem that requires bridging coalitions and consensus across every level, from the mayor to the DA to the police to the sheriff's department. And that's why I've been advocating for a drug market intervention strategy.
Do you think City College is an important institution, and what should be done to maybe connect it more to these issues that we have as a city?
Yeah, I think it's a really important institution. Some of the things I would love to see it do is become a training ground for a lot of the positions we need to fill in our city. If we could train people to become police officers, train people to work in behavioral health and mental health, I think that would be a great way to bring up staffing in areas where we're really short with people who already have a connection to the city.
Bilal, agree or disagree?
The primary problem we have with a lot of these issues that we're talking about are actually a delivery of services. It's a management problem, not a budget problem. And I think that's the issue that I've seen in City College. It's the issue I've seen on the school board. It's the issue I've seen on the board of the supervisors as well. We need to have better governance and better management of the budgets that we already have. And I think that what that takes is people who've actually had experience in the private sector and the public sector.
Scotty, hit me.
There are systemic problems that have a huge ripple effect in terms of our ability to make sure that the people who are working on the streets of San Francisco for the city of San Francisco actually live in San Francisco. And so, yes, it's City College, but yes, it's increasing the housing stock and expanding the middle income tier of housing units in San Francisco.
Do you think that San Francisco city government is corrupt? Does it suffer from corruption? There's been a lot of headlines past couple of years, whether it's people with inside city departments, it could be nonprofits who interface with the city. Is there a systemic corruption problem?
I'm not prepared to say that it is systemically corrupt, but we certainly see instances of corruption on a basis that is far too regular for my level of comfort. And, whether it's SF Safe, that executive director going down with as many felony counts as Donald Trump was charged with for embezzling over $700,000 of taxpayer funds, whether it's Providence United being caught submitting over $105,000 of fake invoices for the conversion of the Oasis Inn, which was a great and well-intentioned project, but obviously the wrong nonprofit partner was involved there. I will go so far as to say that we do have a nonprofit industrial complex in City Hall, and I do think we need to figure out a way to end that.
Autumn, thoughts?
I think a lot of the time it's kind of like soft corruption, right? We're trying to do too many things and we're not tracking the results of anything. So I think there is a lot of that sort of corruption. There are a lot of places where we are not being effective and we don't really seem to care whether we're being effective or not. I think we need to take a hard look at whether what we're doing is actually getting results for the people of San Francisco. And that's especially important because we are facing a massive budget deficit.
Bilal, do you agree?
There is, and I think it stems from a systemic bureaucracy problem. I like to say that because of bureaucracy allows corruption to fester.
It has a lot of nooks and crannies, regulations that people can hide and take advantage of things because it's not transparent. You can't see into it.
And a good example of this is in our housing crisis. When you have the slowest city to build, then in turn, with so many permits and so many fees,
enterprising people can say, oh, I can sell a service to expedite because it's so slow.
A great example of this that intersects all these things, directly in District 5, there was a Trader Joe's that opened in Hayes Valley. It took 10 years to open that Trader Joe's. There's a bunch of different reasons why, but one of them was that Trader Joe's is part of a condo development that was also significantly delayed because of different permitting issues. But because of those significant delays, the developer of that project was bribing Mohammed Nuru, who's now indicted and then in the FAA.
Former head of public works, kind of the highest profile case of someone of a huge abuse of power.
So this one Trader Joe's was, because of bureaucracy in our housing development process, got caught up in a corruption scandal. I firmly believe that we need to do many things to address our corruption problem, but we also have to prioritize addressing bureaucracy and red tape throughout government and City Hall to ensure that we don't have the conditions that allow corruption to fester.
Some voters, it will come to November and they really may not have paid attention at all. They maybe just saw your name on a sign and they're making decisions sometimes just based like on a booklet, on an endorsement, and it's like maybe it's a 15-second scan of what's there and they're deciding. So what do you want them to remember about you and voting for you if you have like that 15-second window to remind them of one thing?
If you believe in building housing, if you believe in public safety, if you believe in downtown revitalization, and you believe in ultimately restoring the vibrancy of San Francisco so that this is a place where families, individuals, and businesses can thrive, you need to elect someone who is going to take the city in a pragmatic direction. And in District 5, I am that candidate.
Autumn?
Yeah, so I have a track record of getting things done for the regular people of San Francisco that no one else in my race has. I have done very difficult things that were thought to be impossible, and I have gotten them done. The other thing to remember about voting for a supervisor in any race is you're not wrong if you vote based on who you'd rather have a beer with, because the supervisor is the person who shows up for you on the worst day of your life. If your house burns down, if someone you love gets shot, it's your supervisor who will show up for you. And it's important to pick someone who you feel would take care of you, who would both be effective and who would be able to help you through it emotionally on the worst day of your life.
Bilal, what do you think?
I love this district. I love San Francisco. I have worked my life on helping marginalized communities on a range of issues, from small business to housing to climate change. I've worked in the Obama administration and nonprofits and the private sector. I have over a decade of experience of getting results on these issues. And we've had 4 years of a lack of progress on our housing crisis, on our affordability crisis, on our fentanyl crisis. I have the experience to actually get results and bring people together across San Francisco's different political aisles and neighborhoods to get results and bring everyone together for a better San Francisco for all.
All right, that's a wrap on today's episode of We Are San Francisco. A big thanks to Autumn Hope, Bilal Mahmood, and Scotty Jacobs. And hey, if you enjoyed this conversation, stay tuned. We've got more candidates from other districts coming up soon, so you won't want to miss that. Make sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell, and keep an eye out for those episodes. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.